Thanks for tuning in. My name's Andre Servin, and you're listening to Off the Roost Podcast, brought to you by Off the Roost Custom Calls, turkey calls for the serious hunter. Join me and my co-host, Paul Murdahl, as we delve into the world of the wild turkey, covering everything from calling tips and tactics and hunting strategies to the latest equipment available, featuring interviews from special guests and custom call giveaways. We'll do our best to keep you up to date on this obsession we call turkey hunting. We appreciate you joining us. Now let's get on with the show. Welcome to the show, everybody. We hope you had a happy new year, and we hope that you guys have a good spring planned out. I know I've already kind of gotten started picking out where I'm going to go. Paul, how about you?
Plans are still up in the air. Got to wait for the Mississippi drawing.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it's pretty much finalized, I think. Minnesota, Wisconsin, and I guess the only one up in the air is Missouri, but we'll probably get back to Missouri too.
Yeah. And so you did put in for Mississippi? That already happened?
No, that's not till January coming up here.
Okay. Yeah, I know for January I'll be putting in for Iowa. It's going to be a short trip for me this go around, but
well,
I'm hoping to get it done.
Lucky mommy loves you. She's going to come take care of the kid for you.
That's right.
The kid and the wife for you.
Yeah, for sure. A newborn and a toddler is especially, around the time that the baby will be here, it'll be kind of a lot for one person to handle with the sleepless nights. So it'll be nice, that my mom's coming out for that, so I can, sneak away for a couple days. So that'll be good.
Yep, cool. So who we got coming up? We got your buddy that you met in the Black Hills last year.
That's right.
The guy from Virginia, Tyler.
That's right. We got Tyler. I met Tyler, and he had his other friend, who they're very good friends, Brad. Brad's a very cool guy, by the way. They went out there, and we just happened to kind of pick the same camp. It was a, what's the word? What's the word for a camp that's not official, but they allow you to do it?
Well, I would got the primitive.
Primitive. There you go. That's what it is. It was a primitive campsite where
camping with no facilities.
Yep. Yeah, it was a primitive campsite with some dirt there for you to camp and an outhouse. And I met Tyler coming out of the bathroom at like 3 a.m. And then we kind of met up later on that day in the afternoon. And then we went out hunting in the evening, and we were able to get a bird down. So that was awesome. And that was in the Wyoming Black Hills. Yep,
cool. So we get ready to get into this then? So it's been a pretty good interview.
Yeah, I think we're ready to get into it. So here we go. So to go ahead and kind of start off with it, if you could go ahead and just kind of introduce yourself, where you're from, how long you've been hunting, when you started hunting gobblers. And I know you mentioned like ridges and stuff, where in Virginia is it that you hunt? What's that terrain like? So go ahead and break that stuff down.
Okay. Yeah. So my name is Tyler Roach, and I'm from this South Central Virginia. We are located in it's a pretty cool area because we have some mountains. I mean, they're not like tall mountains or nothing. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, we're not in the Rockies or anything here, but the Appalachian Mountains are we're kind of at the foothills, so we've got rolling hills, and you can get it. And I've gone and hunted up in the mountains a lot too, but mostly just rural farmland, rolling hills, heavy timber. A lot of timber, which a lot of that's being cut, and you got a lot of like clear cuts and cut over, and then that turns into like planted pine and stuff. Seeing more and more of that, but
we got
just a lot
we
of
got
ag.
that going on too. Yeah,
just a lot of ag, a lot of cattle farms, a lot of tobacco is a big crop here. And so you'll have like tobacco in the summer months, and then you may have another crop like in the fall, or even into the winter. But
and kind of sounds a little bit like northern Missouri.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I've spent some time in Missouri, and I would say it's similar to like northern Missouri. Let's see, more like western Kentucky, maybe more similar.
Right. Northern Missouri without the access to the mountains.
Yeah, we do have some mountains.
What's the elevation change on those ridges where you're hunting? Like, are they like 300, 400 foot like difference from top to bottom? Is it just 100 or 50?
No, it's probably more around like 100, sometimes maybe 150 to 200, but it's more probably about 100 foot.
Yeah, so that is, Paul, that is a little bit more like northern Missouri there. Right. At least I remember it being about 50 to 100,
Right.
So when did you start hunting, man? And would you start hunting first?
Yeah.
Did you start deer hunting first? Small game?
Yeah.
It had to be squirrels,
deer hunting.
Squirrels and rabbits.
Yeah, we did a lot of rabbit hunting too. A little bit of squirrel hunting, but my dad was a big deer hunter.
Yeah.
And at the time, or when I was young, it was deer and quail.
Okay.
And so bird hunting, quail hunting, which that's like the only upland bird that we have, but we would do a lot of deer hunting. I can remember him taking me, and I'm young, 3 and 4 years old. He was taking me out.
Yeah.
And so I really, really had the deer hunting in my blood kind of, early on. And I think I was probably, I know they told me here last week that I was 8 when I killed my first deer. It was a doe.
Okay.
And so, it was just, the deer hunting was just in my blood. I was eat up with it. And we did a lot of rabbit hunting. So as I was about 10, 11, 12, somewhere in that age range, the quail just kind of went away. Too much, too many predators. You could raise birds and turn them out and stuff, but my dad, he got out of that, and he got some rabbit beagles. And so we would rabbit hunt with beagles quite a bit.
Okay.
And so that was kind of the other thing. And then into my teenage years, my cousin and I were really close, and he deer hunted, and I did, and we would hunt together all the time. And about 16, 17, we both got coon dogs, and we would coon hunt a lot. And so that was always in the picture, just always hunting something, but never turkeys.
How old are you?
I'm 33. Yeah.
33. So this would be like through the mid 2000s then?
Yep. About
early mid 2000s when you were growing up?
Yeah. 2006, 2007. I was probably coon hunting about that time.
Right.
And
Paul, so at this point, you got like 15, 16 years under your belt chasing gobblers, right?
Yeah, mid 2000s. Yeah, 15 probably.
Okay.
I started early 90s, like late 80s possibly, but right around 1990, somewhere around there.
Well, that's when I was born, so.
Yeah. We're actually the same age, Tyler.
Oh, yeah?
Yep. So, all right, yeah, man, go ahead. I think you're leading into how you got into gobblers, man.
Right. Yeah. So my brother, I have a younger brother, and he was like me, deer hunted, we did all the same stuff. But he had a older gentleman that started taking him turkey hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my brother's best friends turkey hunted. And he finds turkey hunting and he's like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, he's like, you got to go with me. He's like, this is awesome.
I love it already.
And
did he show up? Did he show up and he's like, deer hunting? Well, this is better.
Exactly. Oh, he was like, this. He's like, you will not even want to deer hunt anymore. You will just want to turkey hunt. He's like, this is where it's at.
For sure.
And I just found that just like crazy. I'm like, there's no way. And when he would tell me, I'm thinking, okay, early mornings in the spring to chase a bird. You're talking about ticks, snakes.
Oh yeah.
It's hot.
Uh-huh.
There's no way, And then I was like of the opinion too, which is funny. I hear folks now talk about it and I'm like, okay, I used to be in that camp. Just like, it's a turkey. It's not, I
drive up on them all the time.
Right. Yeah. I could go out any pasture and shoot one with a, 270 at any time, it's like not a big deal, whatever. I set a blind up. They'll come through the pasture. They're, shoot one with the bow, it's not a big deal. And I have a picture somewhere. I'll maybe try to find it, but of my cousin and I that I'm telling you about. And we shot this, and I feel bad to even say it now. I mean, it was all legal, but we shoot this Jake out in this field, and we're just like holding it up by its feet. We don't even know how to fan it out or whatever. That was like the first turkey we killed that I'd ever killed, maybe. And
what's funny, I was actually going to ask you about your first bird, man. So you kind of already went into that.
Well, yeah. I actually have. I don't know if you can see it over this way. There's
I do
one
see
on the
something
wall.
on the wall. It looks like is that like caped with wings?
It's like a fan, right?
Yeah, it's like a fan, and then the wings there, and that's actually my first turkey that I properly killed. Yeah, was able to hold on to that, keep that. But yeah, just to get into that. So anyway, my brother's like, yeah, you got to go, and he just keeps pressuring me.
Yeah.
And so finally one day, I'm like, okay, like we'll go. And I'm at this point, let's see, he's like 16 or 17. So I'm about 20. And so, okay, we'll go. So I get up one spring morning and I don my Carhartt, dark brown Carhartt pants, and some old mossy oak, really yellow top, camouflage top, and I take some face paint and like put it on my face.
Yeah.
And I'm going to, I have no idea what I'm even getting into. And we go, and it's before light, and he knew where some birds were roosting at. And so we walk out into this field, and immediately one just starts hammering on the limb. And I would say almost from that moment, but maybe not quite that moment, I was becoming hooked.
Oh yeah.
It's just hammering. And so we sneak in and get set up. And my brother begins to do some soft calling, some tree yelps and stuff. And he does a fly down with his hat, and everything, and no decoys or nothing. Just
is this all stuff he learned from that older gentleman? Because this sounds pretty advanced for a 16-year-old.
Yeah, and he would argue that he's a better turkey hunter than I am. So he's going to say, "Oh yeah, I knew what I was doing at 16." Like, but I believe so. He learned a lot from this gentleman.
Just was a sponge. And, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
How long did your brother hunt him before you decided you wanted to try it?
This has to be like 1 year, maybe, right?
No, he went with the gentleman probably 3 years consecutively, and so he got his driver's license and started, hunting them on his own and stuff. So he hunted them about 3 or 4 years, before I ever went. But he does this fly down with this hat. This bird hammers in the tree for 15 minutes and pitches right down and struts directly to us, stops at 30 yards, lets one off. And my brother said, "Okay, you ready?" And I said, "Yeah." And he kikied, and he comes out of strut, sticks his head up, and I put the bead on and pull the trigger, and that was it. Ran out there, got the bird, and I think I left the field. If I didn't leave the field, I left the house when we got back. But I may have left the field, went to Walmart, and bought every turkey call that was on the shelf.
That's awesome. Because you're like, I got to do this now.
The next morning I was out there. I had no idea what I was doing.
I love it.
My brother couldn't go, but the next morning I was out there, and I remember taking a push button call and just out there, just pushing the button, and that was the start of it.
Did you get any responses from that group of birds that was there, or was that just the only Tom on the property, or Jake? Did you go back to the same place or completely different spots?
So we had several, and we still do. We have several farms that we have. So we have a good relationship with several different farmers, and so we have quite a bit of land that we can go on. And so I would bounce around and just try to find a bird. And I struggled a lot at first, I think, but I definitely was hooked from that time on. And I can tell you, I did call in a bird that first year.
Yeah.
So that I killed my first one at the beginning part of the season, and by the latter part of the season, I was watching. I mean, I watched every video. I mean, back then, like YouTube and everything wasn't what it is now. So, I was going to like Walmart and buying like the Primos DVDs and going to sporting goods stores and finding any old DVDs and stuff that I could find. But I was watching, everything that I could.
Yeah.
And I went in blind on this ridgetop one morning at about 11 o'clock. In Virginia, most of the season, you can only hunt till 12. And I went in blind on this ridge one morning, and I just had a new pot call. And I was just sitting there. My brother had tried to teach me how to cut. And, I was just sitting there practicing cutting. And as I'm doing that, one fires off in the bottom below me. So I spin around the tree. I get on the other side. I'm facing this bird. I'm like, I'm gonna call this thing in. Well, he's way below me. I mean, chances of me actually calling him up this ridge probably are slim. But I just start calling to him. Well, while I'm continuing to call and he's answering, another one from behind me hammers, and I guess he was probably coming in the whole time and probably been hearing me. He hammers, and I can tell he's probably 50 yards behind me, and I can start hearing the leaves, right?
Oh yeah.
And so he comes in from behind me, and as he's coming, he comes out in front of me, and he crosses this road bed that comes up this ridge. And I steady the bead on him, and I pull the trigger. Click. No shell.
Oh.
There's no shell in the action. And so I lose it at that point. I'm frantic, and I'm pump action shotgun. I pump it, and he's running at this point, and I fire off a warning shot. Never touched him, but so I can say I did one in that first year.
That's not bad.
And I think that ate me up even more. Like that really hooked me even more too. Like once that happened, but I didn't get him. That following year. Yeah, that following year.
It's like the Pavlov's dog thing. It gets you more, not getting rewarded all the time, gets you more hooked than getting rewarded all the time.
Sure.
That's right.
So I know you touched on this a little bit. You're not the only one. I am new to this situation, and I'm still trying to figure it out. But I know a lot of people, I would say a big majority of people are in this situation here. So you have a family, a full family, married, and you have 5 kids.
Yeah.
And so explain that, man. Because I know for me, like, for example, right now, deer season opened up on the 13th, I think, or the 15th. Yep. Normally at this point, I don't even know how many times I would have gone already. You know, it's like on my days off and then maybe even like in the morning before work. Um, but now, you know, kind of having a kid, being a little bit extra busy with work at the moment. Luckily it's like deer season and not turkey season, so I'm not like kicking myself as bad.
Mhm. Right.
Wait
But
about 6 months.
yeah, but I've only been out twice.
Yeah.
And I know
Yeah.
I was talking with you about this a little earlier. It seems like maybe I kind of have my time off from work kind of surrounded around the gun season a little bit. Um, but so how do you do it, man? How do you do it?
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's definitely tough. I mean, to be able to allocate the time that we would like to, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so one thing is that hats off to my wife. She does a fantastic job, and she's willing to let me have my time. But one thing that I would say is that is really helpful is to she needs her time too, right?
Yeah.
And she needs to be able to do the things that she wants to do, and so I try to facilitate that as much as I can. Right?
Yeah.
If
In the off season, right?
she needs,
Right.
Yeah.
right at the right times, hey, go do your thing. I'll watch
Yeah.
the kids.
You gotta pay
just so
your
that there's a
dues.
balance. Just so that there's a balance there.
Mm-hmm. And how
Yeah.
does
And so
she
then
do
that
5?
maybe in
How does she do 5 kids during? Because I know when I met you over in Wyoming, you guys that was actually the tail end of a western swing for you guys, because you guys were in Montana before that. So you guys were out for what, like 7 days or something?
Yeah, we were gone 7 days. Yeah.
And so how'd she do 5 kids? That's a lot for 7 days, man.
Yeah. It takes a village.
Yeah.
But my grandparents, my parents,
Kind of help out.
They were able to help her out a lot.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and another thing, like in the same vein of saying, she has a beach trip that she, likes to go on with some of her friends and stuff. So, I try to facilitate that so that, she gets her trip, away from the kids, and she can go and do, and then I'll, kind of have my trip. And so that's how we've kind of struck a balance there. Like I said, it's definitely hard at times. And you have to come up with or at least I feel like I have to come up with kind of more creative ways of.
Yeah, we were talking about that. Yeah, share some of those, because I think some of those are kind of pretty beneficial for some guys.
Yeah, so especially on on the deer hunting side, trying to utilize trail cameras. I shot that buck Sunday, and I've not been hunting since, right?
Yeah.
And I probably won't until I get another one on a camera and start to hone in on that one, and then maybe I'll hunt him. But actually, spending time in the woods, haven't been back out.
Yeah. Are you using the cellular trail cameras?
Yeah, it's a mixture. I do use some cellular, and then I have some that are not.
What cell cameras do you have, and do you like them?
I have the Reveal 2.0 by Tacticam, and I do like them.
If I'm correct, I believe Tacticam's a Minnesota company.
Oh, really?
I think so. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I watch and I listen to a lot of different stuff out there, and I've heard. I think you're going to hear good and bad things pretty much about all of them. So, take it with a grain of salt. But personally, I've had good success with them. Battery life has been good. Trigger speeds, all that stuff. I mean,
I hear
it's
the
all
one.
been good.
Yeah, I hear the one you have is actually the good one. That's the one you want to get.
Yeah, I've had a lot of luck with them, and so I do like those. Especially from a standpoint of being able to check them, not having to go out again. You're not putting as much pressure on the deer, and then it's also easier for someone like myself 5 kids to
Yeah.
not have to run out all the time and keep checking cameras and pulling cameras and all of that, So yeah, that's one thing.
When you say
I would
they got
say-
decent battery life, what are you looking at? You're looking at weeks, months?
It can run so good batteries with lithium batteries. They can go multiple months. I've had them to last multiple months, and it really depends on like where you put them and then what your delay is and et cetera. If you're in like a high traffic area, if it's on a trail,
Right.
or a food source, the high traffic, it's gonna eat it up a lot faster. But even with that, with the lithiums, you probably get over a month. If it's say like on a scrape, on a particular scrape, and it's not as much traffic on it, I've had them last throughout a season, 3 or 4 months long. So
Sure.
I know for me, I'm sure this is most guys too, I get a ton of just like wind movement on my cameras, like leaves and all that stuff. Do you get a lot of that with cell cameras? Or is it like only big movements, like if a deer walks by?
Maybe some of my older cameras that I have, I might have some of that. But those Tacticams, you may get a squirrel or a bird from time to time, but no, most of the time if it goes off, it's going to be something bigger.
That's good.
Fox, a dog, or
for reference here, I'm using because I predominantly hunt public land. I'm using those cheaper Tasco cameras. They're about like $20-$30 because that way if somebody swipes that, it's like not a big deal, versus the cell camera. Those things are I think like over $100, right? Like 160 or something, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, you can get these Tacticams now for like 125 on sale, 130ish, somewhere in there.
That's not bad.
But I'll give you a tip on that. And one thing that I like to do is actually place my cameras fairly high.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'll take like one stick. So stick of choice, whichever. But like I've got some XOP looking at right now. Sticks that I have. Yeah, so I'll just take one stick and place it on the tree and go up. I'm fairly tall, so it probably ends up putting the camera about 10 feet up or so, something like that.
Yeah.
And I do that for two reasons. Like I was talking about, a lot of the land that I hunt, it is private, but a lot of other people hunt it. And then also, I have had some bucks to have a negative reaction to a camera that they saw.
Yeah.
And you can actually.
That's it.
Well, I've seen it. I'll set mine to record video, and you see the buck coming, and he clearly spots the camera, and immediately wheels and takes off.
And then that's it.
And I didn't get him again in that location. So I started placing my cameras higher and kind of out of line of sight for the deer, but also out of line of sight really for human traffic as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I used to bow hunt up northern Minnesota, we used to have to put our cameras up higher just to get them out of the bears' reach.
Yep.
Because the bears always would come and swat them.
Yeah, I've had some bear mess with mine, and then a lot of coons will mess with them too. They see them, I play with them and stuff. But I've just started putting them higher and had better success with cameras not getting tampered with, or I've had some to be stolen. So just putting them higher just seems to work better for everything, really.
And I know, I guess, speaking of bears, Paul, you had a bear encounter this spring right up north. You got it on video.
Yeah. Yep. He come walking up to me, and I was hoping he was going to walk right. If he would have kept on track, he would have come within 10 yards of me. I guarantee you. And I was videoing him. And as I was moving, something fell out of my vest and hit the stock of my gun, and he jumped up into a tree 20 yards away from me. And you can see in the video, I'm trying to lean around the tree to get a good shot at him. And when I got a good look at him, he got a good look at me, and he jumped off the tree and skedaddled.
Yeah.
He wasn't real big. He was like 200 pounder, but it was pretty cool to see.
Yeah.
I ran into one last year too, when turkey hunting in Wisconsin.
That's right. I remember that. You almost stepped on him.
All right, he was bedded down. I walked up 10 yards on him before he decided he was gonna scurry off.
And I think you didn't even really know he was there till he got up, right? Because he was in the direction you were going to walk in.
I would have walked right up to the bush he was laying in.
Yeah, that's so crazy. I've heard of like kind of where they'll bed, but that one's just chilling next to a bush. And your theory was that he also patterned the same birds you were after.
Well, I was kind of wondering, but I hunted the area again. I think I couldn't get back to it until the next weekend, I think. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't around that I seen, and the turkeys weren't there neither. So
yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna do a little bit of kind of sharing how me and Tyler met each other, and then I actually kind of want to break into the whole Wyoming hunt, and like Western tactics and all that stuff. Yeah. So I met Tyler this past turkey season over in Wyoming. And as I mentioned earlier, it was on the tail end of the Western swing that him and his buddy Brad were on. And they tagged out in Montana and decided they had a few days left. So they hit Wyoming. And I met Tyler at the bathroom at the campground at like 3 a.m. or something like that. And and yeah, luckily we kind of hit it off. He was a really nice guy. I was actually really surprised kind of with that information you shared. Mainly for me, I had a friend kind of give me some waypoints. And so I went there, and the birds, I don't have the most experience with Miriam's. So you hear all these things about, oh, they gobble like crazy. They gobble like crazy. And I wasn't getting that. And then I went to go roost some birds the night before, or trying to roost some birds. And I got a courtesy gobble out of one, and it sounded really far off. And I just didn't know if they were acting like Easterns and they were there and they just didn't want to talk, or there weren't any there. So I just wanted to ask Tyler what his experience was that the night before, if they roosted birds and how well they gobbled. And he had a completely different experience than me. And that was going to be, I think that was going to be their last day there. And then they were going to head out the next morning, something like that. And he was like, hey, well, we're going to go after these birds right now. But if things don't work out, we'll let you know, because we're going to be going back to Virginia. And then we actually ended up going out together on an evening hunt, and we kind of hit it off and kind of had a good time. I had a great time. So so that's how, and then we've kind of kept in touch ever since. So that's how I know Tyler. So I want to break down that Wyoming hunt. Yeah. So we were in the Wyoming Black Hills, and for anybody that's like, well, why'd you mention Wyoming Black Hills? It's very huge. We're not exactly going to be giving away the actual location of it, and we weren't the only ones there. I was actually experiencing a lot of pressure. I wanted to know what made you pick that spot. One of the questions I have for you is, what made you pick that location? Because it was which is a good thing. It wasn't exactly the type of location that anybody would just randomly pick, because it wasn't near a road. You had to walk away. So I guess share
the location
that.
Of where the location of where we actually found those birds at? Or
what intrigued you to kind of be like, okay, cool, this is an area to look for on the map? What intrigued you to that? Because I know for me, when I was looking for birds, and I've covered this with Paul before, I mainly look for certain land features. I'm very much like a land feature kind of guy. So I'll look for, ridges that, face the sun in the morning, and maybe there's a water source nearby. I try to stack all of the pluses of a habitat, and I try to narrow it down that way, especially in a place like the Black Hills, which it's so vast, it's so large.
Yeah.
It can feel like looking for a needle in a haystack. So I feel I increase those odds if there's enough habitat pluses that I can stack together, and okay, I'm going to go spend my time there. So, because I know when we first got to that spot, we hung out for a few hours and didn't even really hear anything. So, yeah, what intrigued you to pick that location?
So when we pulled into town there, and there's a little gas station there close by, we actually ran into a lot of other hunters there.
Yep.
And we had picked that area, the Black Hills there, because we had flights out of Rapid City, South Dakota, like 2 days later from the time that we got there. So we pulled into the gas station, and the reports that we were getting were nobody's finding birds, and there's pressure everywhere. There's people hunting everywhere, and no one's hearing anything. Nobody's finding any birds. And if you do, there's like 5 other people trying to converge on that bird to hunt it. That's what we were told.
Yeah.
And so talking to Brad, we just kind of sit there in the parking lot of the gas station, I think eating lunch and looking on Onyx. And I told him, I said, we've got to get away from everyone else. Like, I don't want to be competing with a bunch of other people and, over one bird or something like that. And yeah, I didn't think we were really going to find much if we were going to all the same areas that everyone else was going to, essentially. Sure. So, the section that we ended up going to, and you went with us, that section there was longer and more narrow. And looking at it on X, it's smaller. Now it's relative because it's still a lot of acreage. I mean, it's still a big tract.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Smaller than the other section.
Yeah.
Right.
And that helps with the narrowing things down too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I told Brad, I said, let's drive back in there a ways, and then let's get out. And I started looking at these ridge systems that, let's get back there. Let's hike in. Let's see if we can get away from everyone else. I felt like we could get far enough back in there and far enough away that we should be able to at least locate a bird. I mean, that was our initial, like the first evening, that was the whole thing. Let's just see if we can locate one.
Were you going down a ridge line, or did you have to traverse over a few to get to where you needed to go? Was it difficult to get to, or was it?
No, there was a trail. Yeah, there was a trail that kind of worked out kind of one ridge, and there was a paralleling ridge, I guess, to that one. And so
across
you could
that
hear,
valley,
you could hear off. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
you could stand there and you could kind of maneuver and throw calls off either side or hear off either side too,
Right.
And initially, looking at it on the map, I planned that first evening to go in and pull a big loop and go down the one ridge or out the spine of that ridge, and then go through the valley and then come back and make a big loop.
That would have been a ginormous loop, man.
Yeah, we never made that. And so we got back in there and we realized, okay, we're not making this loop that we thought we were going to make. And it was later in the evening, and I would say around 7 or so, we were back there, and we'd kind of pushed back to closer to the edge of the public, and there was a private boundary that was pretty deep in there, and several miles that we had hiked back in there. And we're kind of up high, on the spine of this ridge, and we just start hearing birds just start hammering just all around us. And I think we heard, I would say 6 to 7 birds that first evening that we heard back there.
Were you calling?
It kind of felt like
they
all kind of got. No, they just started firing up on their own, and then one was a little bit closer, and we tried to make a move on that one and get set up, and we actually did call it in. didn't work out, and it had gotten dark, and so we were like, okay, we're going to come back in here the next morning. But we knew we had to be in there early, and we had a big hike in, and so that's why it was like 3 o'clock or whatever time it was, 4 a.m. or something. Meeting Andre outside the restroom there. We were getting started early the next morning because we had a fairly decent drive in there, but then once you park, we had a 4 or 5 mile hike to get back in there that next morning.
And that drive to that spot, it's like not 5 minutes either. And I know what you mean, like probably when you first created that loop you wanted to do, because it's so vast, but looking at it on your phone, it looks like, oh, well, that's just probably like 1.5 miles. But then like you were saying, then you start walking it and realize that it's actually like 4 or 5 miles. And then, and even that, that drive that we did, you're losing, I think, about like 25 minutes or something like that just doing that drive, which doesn't sound like a whole lot. But later in the season, you're trying to get more sleep. You're going to have to hike back 4 or 5 miles, and then you're going to have to slow down once you get to the spot that you want to be. So like that 25 minutes, you're losing total of 50 minutes going back and forth, but
we'd already been pushing it hard for multiple days too in Montana, so we were pretty gassed even then. And those last 2 days for us were our longest like hiking days. I think we had like 16 or 18 miles or something.
Oh yeah.
That's why I sleep in the back of the Suburban. Saves me that 25 minutes.
Yeah.
I was going to say that would have been a much better solution. And, if we had driven out, I think we probably would have had a better setup for that. But we flew out, which was great for us. We drove out to Montana the first year.
That's a long drive.
And it was tough. It was 30 hours.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And being able to hunt the same day. So, we get up.
Oh, yeah.
In bed, here at the house, drive to the airport, and then you're hunting that afternoon in Montana. That's pretty cool. So
that's very cool, man. Because that would have been like maybe 2 days lost of the trip just doing the drive, back and forth, I imagine you guys did shifts or something.
Yeah, both driving out and coming back, we drove straight through. We didn't stop. Driving out, we did stop in Spear.
For sure.
Because it was like sleeting. And we knew we weren't going to really gain a whole lot by making the rest of the drive that night. So we did stop. But, I mean, we would take shifts and, somebody in the back would essentially be driving a Suburban, somebody in the back would sleep while the passenger up front would help keep the driver awake. And then, we would just rotate seats and keep doing that. And we did that for 30 plus hours. And, you're eating gas station food and, you get out there and you just feel like crap to start with.
For sure.
You're already exhausted. And then to try to hike and hunt and do that whole thing, that first year was, like I said, it was tough on us and a pretty big learning curve, but
yeah, you guys got it kind of figured out now a little bit too, because I'm still on the like soup and peanut butter diet and stuff and gas station food. I know you guys had like a little grill and you guys were like cooking burgers or something in camp,
Yeah.
Getting that better fuel.
Yeah, logistically it was a lot of planning to do the flights out, and flights back, figuring out, how many bags we could check and what we could bring in our checked luggage versus what we could bring in our carry-on, and how many bags we could have in carry-on and what could go in which bags. But once we kind of figured that out and got a pretty good handle on that, and we went by Walmart in Rapid City and kind of stocked up on some other stuff like the little portable grill, which I mean, I lost $50 on that, but it was worth it over the week. But
so you guys just threw that away at the end of the trip, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We tried to find somebody to give it to, but couldn't find anybody. So.
Well, yeah, it's kind of weird,
because
you're at a gas station. Hey, buddy, you want a grill for free? That's like kind of weird, Right. Most people are like, no, I'm good, man. Why is this guy trying to give me a grill?
We were like giving away whatever you want. We had bought some some stuff that you just could not fit, like pillows, we were able to bring like our tent, our sleeping bags and that sort of stuff, our air mattresses.
Yeah, for sure. And then another thing too, and it'd be cool if you could break this down. So you guys were flying back with 3 Miriams, and you had those things in duffel bags on the plane, correct?
Correct.
So
talk to the taxi.
Go ahead and break down kind of like what you guys did for guys that are on that same situation. They fly out somewhere, they got a bird, they want to take it back home, they want to get it taxidermied. How'd you guys do that? I actually thought, I don't know if you guys are going to be able to do this because you guys are going to go and check it. They're going to x-ray that thing and be like, there's a bird in there.
and they did. That part of the story gets pretty hilarious in my opinion. But I'll just say we talked to our taxidermist beforehand. He was like, if you get one, just put it in your check bag, bring it on back. And I'm like, do what? And he was like, no, you heard me right. Go ahead, just put it in your check bag. And he gave us the whole deal on it. So what we did is we just we tried to cool them down, or we tried to find somewhere that had a freezer. We were gonna try to freeze them to start with, but we couldn't find anywhere. So we ended up just keeping them on ice and put them in trash bags and kept them on ice and kept them cool. And then before we caught our flight, we just essentially added like 1 or 2 more trash bags and made sure that they were wrapped up and everything, and kept cool right up until the time like we put them in the bags to take on the plane. Put them in the bags and just carried them right in and check those bags. We actually had to buy a couple extra duffel bags from Walmart when we were about to head out because we had 3 turkeys to take back. So, just check those. But funny, when we were going through that process and they set the bag back in TSA, it actually had me come and break down our shotguns behind the counter, which was interesting. We hadn't had to do that before. Yeah. But flying back, we did. And so I go behind the counter and I'm breaking down the shotguns and I'm looking at the bags and they go through the x-ray machine and a guy running it like stops the machine and just starts looking at it for like 5 minutes. And I finally get the shotguns done and he's still looking at the bags. I mean, I go back over to Brad. I said, this ain't going to work. I said, they're going to flag us or something. Like the turkeys aren't making it back. We will watch, and they finally let them on through. Well, we go on through the security, and we're gonna, we go through the whole process. We take our carry-on bags and set them on the conveyor and everything, and the machine, and it does its deal. And Brad's in front of me, and he steps out, and immediately they grab him by the arm, and they pull him behind like the little wall or whatever. It's off to the side. I go through the deal. I step out. They pull me aside, and I'm like, what is this about?
For sure.
And they're like, well, I'm not gonna get into all the details, but they're like, your lower midsection, let's say, has alerted. I said, dude, what? I said, yeah. I said, we're gonna have to do a search on you, see if we can't figure out what's alerting here. And so they started just grilling us about where we'd been, what we'd been doing. Ended up coming out and swabbing our hands for like explosives and all this other stuff.
That's crazy, man.
Finally, they just said, okay, you're good to go. And they just let us go. And we had to go put our stuff back in our bags they had torn all that apart and pack everything back up. But I still think that was, I'm laughing at saying this, but I think that was because of the turkeys that were in all, 3 guys or 2 guys carrying 3 turkeys around. They flag those guys. Hey, you need to search these guys real quick or something like that,
For sure.
Well, that, I can't imagine it's the first time they've seen turkey hunters come through.
No. As a matter of fact, when we landed in Rapid City, we ran into some guys from a neighboring town to us. But we knew we had some acquaintances, I guess you'd say. And they were getting back on the plane, and they had theirs in their duffel bags too. So I mean, it's probably pretty common.
Right.
I don't know what happened that we alerted. only thing that I could think of is potentially, if it can pick up, something could pick up traces of like gunpowder residue on our hands or something like that. Because obviously we've been shooting a bunch over that week or something like that, and they come out and swabbed our hands. But
probably that redneck Virginia accent you got.
Yeah, at the time, Brad was bearded as well, and we were probably looking pretty rough coming in from a week's long trip in Montana and Wyoming. And,
right.
Hey, pull these boys.
You know what I think it could have been too is because this was Rapid City, and I believe like the Black Hills is a 1 bird limit. So you guys are 2 guys coming back with 3. They probably wanted to open those bags up and check those tags because they're like, if this is all South Dakota, like this is not allowed, And maybe they wanted to look at that. And
they very well may have done that, after they let it on through or something like that. I'm not sure, and they did ask us about our hunt, and they grilled us pretty good, but it was pretty interesting. It's funny.
Yeah. So the other question that I had I have a couple. I kind of want you to break down your successful hunt in Minnesota. I'm sorry. Your successful hunt in Wyoming.
Okay.
And then after that, I kind of want to close with any sort of tips that you have for hunting Western birds. You guys kind of, filled your tags and, and I just kind of want you to share a little bit of tips for the listeners.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that you meant Montana. I think you said Wyoming, but about our successful trip to Montana or the success we had in Montana.
Well, I was mainly referring to the hunt that we were on together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I will say,
but you could sprinkle some Montana on there as well.
Yeah. I think for the success that we had was, and especially like in Montana, I would encourage anyone going out there to hunt to take the time to drive around some, find access, find different places that you can go in or access, and just kind of scout from the road if you can. Some of the different public areas that you may be hunting, because the first year that we went out, we had one piece of public in mind and we dove straight into there. We started hiking immediately. We started just covering ground, and we did find birds. We got on birds there. But this year we had a much different experience in that it was raining the first couple of days that we got out. And so we spent the first day, a day and a half really, just driving around, looking at where other hunters were, where the other hunting pressure was, looking at different pieces of public, not just one in particular, but several different tracks. And we found birds from the road. Just doing that, found birds from the road that were on public and on private. Did some door knocking. The birds that we got were actually on public, but we hunted some private out there too. Just birds that we had seen and went up, knocked on the door. Hey, think we could hunt out here? Yeah, come on. They had no problem with it. And so that was one takeaway from that is, I know our first year out, we were super anxious just to get in there and start hunting and covering ground and all of that. But I think if you spend a little bit of time, especially at first, to learn the area, find access, different ways to maybe access a particular piece of public, and then also, just kind of scouting from the road, essentially, other hunting pressure and finding birds potentially that way. That was a big help.
It looks a lot. It looks a lot different on X than it does. It's nice to get in the area and look around and see what you're actually dealing with the actual habitat and stuff. Looks like I can see where that would work out pretty good.
Yeah, the first year we went out, we literally drove right up in, and we didn't know at the time. We were still struggling that first year to know, okay, can the difference between like the block land management areas and then versus like national forest areas, and then where we could access, where we couldn't access. Do we pull off this road? Can we not pull off this
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we just didn't know anything. And
Yeah, there's a lot of landlocked public out there too, and it could be a little confusing sometimes because it can almost look like you can access it, but
right.
out west they could be a little bit weird about what is it called, the airspace or something like that.
Yeah.
And I know there was an article that was shared where I think some elk hunters, they got taken to court because they set up a ladder. It was one of those things where the public met at the corners, but then the other corners were private. So they took a ladder
I've
to
heard
go
about that.
over it. Yeah, and they climbed it, and then the landowner came out, got super mad, tried taking them to court, and they won. The guys hunting the public land won that case.
Yeah,
which is cool. But that's one thing you do have to be concerned about when you go out west is some of those weird little things like that. You never know if the person on the private might get kind of weird about it.
Yeah. So I would say take the time to learn the area, to look at, different pieces, to look at other hunting pressure. And that really helped us out a lot in Wyoming as well. Is, when we went into that track that we hunted, for the first, even driving in, at the first mile or two driving in there, you saw other vehicles. And then as you got further back, you kind of got away from, seeing the other vehicles and then even the tire tracks. And I can remember when we walked that trail out that first evening, looking at the trail and, there being boot tracks the first mile, and then the second mile boot tracks, and then the third mile, not so many boot tracks. And then like the fourth mile, one old track or something like that. You just kind of like started to piece it together. Okay, nobody's coming back here.
Right.
And
just distance is the barrier instead of like a steep ridge line or steep hill or something. Using distance as the barrier.
Yep. Yeah, that's correct. I know even when I was out, because I went out the next morning because we roosted birds, and I realized too, because I went to go look at the land after nothing happened. I sat there for like an hour or something, and I didn't hear anything. And I went and I took a peek, and so there was never anything roosted there. How it was where we kind of got that one bird is. So there was the tree line, and it almost looked like the point of the ridge, but there was actually, once that dropped off by maybe like 10 feet or something like that, there was like a big bench, and it was like almost like I think it was maybe a trail, because it looked kind of manicured a little bit, and so the birds were traveling from wherever they were traveling from, and they were using that trail. And then that's how the bird that you got, it heard the calling and it veered off that trail and it went up that way, where we ended up getting it. There was a fence, that the typical 3-wire fence along the whole property boundary.
Right.
And I think potentially that one little finger ridge that bird came up, there must have been a little break in the fence right in that area. But the birds that we were calling to after you harvested yours, they were on that little trail, and it sounded like they were roosting off of that point, but they weren't. They were just gobbling there. And then I have no clue where those birds ran off to, because it was getting pretty late when we were hearing them still responding back to us and before they went quiet. But I went and I took a peek, man, and they must have covered, like 400 or 500 yards from that point to where it could potentially be the next roosting option. Yeah, they were on that, like this little bench out there on the property boundary. So
yeah, and one thing I would say too, as a tip, and it's kind of something we've all talked about already, but that looking at OnX, and you see these public tracks, right? or blocks. Out there everything's in blocks, but you see these public tracks, and there may be one that looks small and it still be like 600 acres, right? And we hunted. Brad actually missed a bird in Montana. His shotgun barrel was bent. I've never seen anything like it, but I called this bird off the roost one morning. We'd actually hunted him right up until he flew up, and then he roosted about 50 yards directly out in front of me. And we just let it get dark, and we crawled back out. And it was right in behind our campsite where we were camping at, and only about 400 yards from the tent or something like that. And this one block is, I don't know. I mean, as I remember it, it's like, maybe it was like 2 blocks, and it was like 600 or 700 acres, something like that. And there were 3 or 4 birds in that area. And if you're looking at Onyx and you're looking at all this vast, all this 200,000 acre, 100,000 acre tracts of public land, and you're like, everyone else is seeing that. And, those places are just getting hit and flooded with pressure and stuff. And I think a lot of times these smaller little tracts are probably overlooked, and probably have most of them. I mean, if it's the right habitat, they probably all will hold, at least several times. And we had a lot of success just in that smaller area right there behind the campsite or campground there.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's another thing, is like just looking at those like little small areas, or looking at the areas that like in Wyoming, there was that much larger tract that had, multiple roads all through it. And that seemed to be where everyone else was going. And then the smaller tract that we kind of went into, which still, I say small, it's relative, and still quite a bit of land.
Absolutely.
Right? There were some other people in there, and we did have to go kind of far and get back away from everyone. But once we did that, we really found the birds back there. So that's another
for
tip,
sure,
I guess.
And I know you guys you were telling me about this out there. Most of your success with Merriam's comes in the evening, not the mornings, right?
Every Merriam's that I've killed so far has been in the evening. Now, Brad got his mid-morning, and we were up on a high point glassing, and his comes through following a hen. It probably, it was a long ways. I don't even know how we saw it really, just other than through the binoculars. But anyway, it works behind a knob, and we, it comes around the right-hand side. We came down and through this valley and came on the left-hand side, and kind of met as they were coming through a saddle. And he got his in the morning, but I've had much better success with, and especially with calling, yelping up, as some would say, calling Merriam's in. I've had a lot more success with that in the evenings as opposed to in the mornings.
Now they're busy in the morning, Hopefully in the evening, the hens have kind of drifted off.
Yeah, my experience with them is in the mornings they get with the hens pretty quick, and they also seem to have an area that they want to get to. And I feel like if you're not between where they're roosted at and that spot that they're trying to get to, they'll sit there and gobble as they walk away. They're not coming to you.
That's kind of
much different,
Yeah, that's kind of Paul's technique, man. His whole thing is finding that spot and getting to that spot. That's how he kind of goes about it.
It's much different than like here in Virginia. We have so much hardwood forest, or even in the pines, but much thicker vegetation, between us and the birds. So even if they're on the ground, and even if they have hens, generally I try, and I'm pretty aggressive. My brother is not as aggressive as I am, and he'll kill birds that I won't, because he's much more patient and he's not as aggressive. I'm either going to bump them or I'm going to kill them. Like, I'm going to get in there as tight as I can to them. I'm going to use every shrub, tree, pine, cedar, crawl, and I'm going to get in as tight as I possibly can. And then I'm going to call to them. And, I have a lot of success like that. Definitely, I'll bump birds from time to time, and it's just kind of the nature of it. But that's just my style. And you know, our hunts in Montana and Wyoming have been much different than that because you use terrain to your advantage, definitely. Topography to your advantage, definitely. But even in the timbered areas, it's so open that you can't really move in a lot.
No.
So other than using topography, you
from what I understand, I don't have any experience hunting them, but they're probably generally on the move anyways, is from what I hear. They're not just kind of hanging out in one area, allowing you to sneak in and get close to them, I would imagine, that often.
Brad and I followed 2 toms and a number of hens nearly 2 miles one day, just trying to keep up. And they would crest over, I'm going to call it a hill or a ridge. They would crest that, and we would, as quickly as we could, try to get up to that. And by the time we would crest that and crawl up over or call to try to locate, they would be the next ridge system over.
Right.
By the time we could get there, and we continued to do that, and we were just staying behind them, and they would answer, they would respond, they would not commit to turning or coming. I mean, they had the direction that they wanted to go, and I don't think, unless you're in front of them, I don't think you're going to do anything with them. We went out to Montana the first year thinking we're going to go out there, and I mean, not to sound arrogant, we have had a lot of success, all 3 of us, my brother, Brad, myself, in killing Easterns in this area. Okay, so we thought, we're going to go out to Montana. We're going to get on some of these Merriams, and we'd heard a lot of good stuff. They gobble all the time. Kind of think you mentioned that, Andre. They gobble all the time,
and that they're dumb.
They'll come running.
Yeah,
they're dumb. They'll come running in. We did not have that experience at all. I mean,
no way.
We kind of the opposite of that, really.
That's probably,
and I had to learn how to hunt them, really.
That's probably experience that's relegated to guys that are hunting the private property.
I could see that.
Right. Yeah. And that could be.
Yeah, if you got like a private property that no one hunts.
Right, or a lease, or you got an outfitter or something that's got private property locked up.
Yeah. Or anybody who lives like I know South Dakota has like the prairie units. A prairie unit, and if you have birds on your unit and you set out some decoys and stuff, I'm sure they'll run right on in,
Yeah. Yeah, I've talked to some other guys that hunted really near where we were at in Wyoming, and they'll use the like a strutter decoy and just get behind it, and walk in and shake it and stuff, and I've heard of that, and they had success out there doing that. But I mean, for us, I don't know. Like I love hunting out west. Like, I mean, I think I'll do it every year that I can for as long as I can. I still want Texas and shoot a Rio, and I'd like to go to Florida and get Osceola. But I mean, it's something about like Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, that just draws me, and I'm like, I just want to go out there and hunt all the time.
Yeah, it's still pretty wild in that area out there, and a lot of the areas out there.
It is.
Yeah,
it really is. And
I agree
using
about
the terrain too to like.
Yeah, seeing the Ponderosa pines and all that. I do agree about that, because like I know for me, I went once, which was that first time, and then I was just like dying to go back again. And for me, I know 2024 spring is going to be a little bit weird for me. I'm not going to be able to go out there because we have another baby due. So that's going to kind of mess with my time a little bit. But 2025, I'm definitely, I kind of have a loop that I kind of like to do, which is the upper Midwest. If I could swing Missouri, I'll do it. But I think I'm always going to include one trip out to either South Dakota or Wyoming every turkey season. You know, I got to go out there for a little bit and make my attempt. And
it's a little closer drive for you than it is for Tyler, though.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
I think,
definitely.
you know, depending on where I go, it could be 8 to 10 hours and versus 30 for him, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And I would say, like, for anyone going out too, you know, especially guys that are used to hunting Easterns and the more forested, you know, densely forested areas, you know, my tip for that would be, you know, try to locate birds and try to move using the topography of the land and find a direction of travel that those birds are already traveling in. And essentially you would want to cut them off. Now, you know, a lot of guys would call that thing ambush style. But you're still going to have to do some calling. You know, you're still going to have to call them in, you know, to pull. I mean, unless you just luck up and maybe, you know, you get in one spot where they're just coming right through. But I mean, I think for the most part, what we've seen is finding a direction of travel, getting in front of them and trying to, you know, essentially cut that off. And then as they near, you know, you can start to call. And, you know, we have had success and had them come on in, you know, doing that, operating in that way.
I do think not only cutting them off, but you do have to also maneuver around them as well, because they could be 80 yards. Cause that morning the morning that you got your bird, I was in a different spot and I had a couple birds off the roost. One was maybe 80 yards over the crest of the ridge and I was on the top, and which it was like a perfect setup for him to kind of come on in, but he had his direction that he wanted to go in and he gave me his courtesy gobble. So that's just the thing. Getting in front of them is sometimes not just enough. You also have to kind of maneuver around them because they could gobble to you. Doesn't mean that they're going to come, you know, versus an Eastern. I feel if you close that distance with an Eastern and call to him, if he gobbles at you, it's more an indication that he's going to show up, you know. Miriam's just like, what's up?
Yeah, I really try to get within 100 yards of an Eastern if I can. You know, sometimes you can't, but if I can get within 100 yards, most of the time I can get him, because if you can pull him 50 yards, even if he has hands, if you can pull him 50 yards, if he cuts half that distance, you know, he's almost in range. For some folks, you know, we'll take a 50-yard shot, but I mean, you know, if you can get him to come 6, okay, and now he's at 40, you know, standing in front of you, you know.
Right. And like you say,
you can get him. And
if he's got hens with them, chances are he's probably not the only gobbler around. So there's probably one or two others looking nearby that you might have a good chance of calling in too.
Yep.
Yeah. And the other thing is with the denser, you know, vegetation that we have, and I feel like it's probably similar for you all. I don't know, but you know, there's so much that he can't see through as he's coming, right? So I will intentionally set up in a spot where he can't really see me until he breaks that, you know, within range. So that and you know, a lot of guys use decoys. I don't use any decoys. I want him to come searching for that hen, right? And and I'll try to manipulate his movement with, you know, throwing a call one direction behind me or the other direction or whatever to get him to come. And I'll scratch in the leaves a lot too. And if I'm behind cover, that he has to break that cover, and as soon as he does, he's in range. That works well for me a lot of times, because you get him answering you, and then he's interested enough that he has to come and check you out. And you know, if he could see at 100 yards that there's nothing there, he's just going to hang up, go back to his other hands or whatever. But if you're on some stuff and he can't see, and a lot of times that'll get
when you're talking cover, you're talking pretty much directly right in front of where you're going to sit down and set up.
Yeah, or within 40 or 50 yards of me, so that if he has to come to the other side of that to be able to see where that hen is, and is me. But you know, if he has to come to the other side of that to see where that call is coming from, then he's in range at that point.
Right.
You know.
I hear where you're coming from, but I'll try to I'll go with the cover directly in front of you. But as far as 40, 50 yards out, I don't like that for myself personally. I'd rather have it behind me, cover behind me, so I got something to break my outline up. But I don't like it out that far if I can help it, because I find a lot of Easterns will be pulled up and they'll be peeking at you through that cover, and you won't even know they're there.
Yeah.
And I actually
depending on what it is too.
I actually got busted this spring. I had a downfall, dead tree out in front of me about 40 yards, and I had been working this bird for a good 2 hours, and there was actually a couple gobblers down there, and one finally come up, and the only reason I knew he was behind that deadfall is because a hen had come up behind me and made a noise, and I turned my head to look, and I heard and all the gobbling and everything else that I had going on that morning, everything just stopped, and it was right from behind that deadfall. He was up there behind there, and he was peeking at me, and I didn't even know he was there.
I mean, where we're at here, there's not many places in the spring that you're going to have 40 or 50 yard area that there's not a lot of cover, right? So, you know, if I'm looking at an opening, okay, if I find a 40 or 50 yard opening, you know, I kind of need that anyway, able to maneuver or to get a shot. And that may be the only spot that I really can call them into. Because the rest of it's going to be, I mean, it's a lot of our creek bottoms are just crazy thick, you know.
Right. We get into some pretty thick.
Walk through.
We get some pretty thick cover areas that we hunt up here, and you know, in a lot of areas it's just little patches you can see, you know, that far out where, you know, a shooting lane here and shooting lane there and shooting lane there, and then there's other places, you know, where you can see 100 yards. It's nice hardwood bottom or a hardwood ridge line or a bench on the ridge line where you can see it's pretty open and you can see for quite a bit.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess it would depend on the area you're hunting as far as where I'd like to cover, but if I can help it, I'd rather have it behind me.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, we definitely try to be conscientious of, you know, having cover behind us too, to break us up. You know, generally, you know, you can. And this is one thing that I normally look for too, is a shaded side of a large tree, so that my shoulder line is not exposed, and then also in that shadow. If I'm sitting in that shadow, you know, you get tucked away pretty good there. And I look for that letting up if I can help it.
Yeah, that in the direct lighting situation, that shadow side could be gold, man. I know 2 years ago I had a whole flock come in to my calling, and it was I think it was like the boss tom, like 3-4 jakes and like 3-4 hens, and they all came into like 20 yards or something like that, and they hung out for about 20 minutes before I was able to get a shot opportunity. And I had no choice but to kind of sit in the direction that the sun was pointing to, but the brim of my hat was casting a shadow over my face that made it almost like very difficult from the contrast of the bright light and then the shadow over my face for the birds to see it. And I think that's kind of what helped me be 20 yards from these birds for about 20 minutes without them running off, you know, was kind of utilizing the shadows.
Mm-hmm.
But so we have definitely kind of gone over the time, and this might have to be another 2-part episode, which is okay. But Tyler, it was great having you on.
Talking turkey. It's hard to stop.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we'll have to get him back on in the spring when the season's
absolutely
season starts up.
Yeah, and hopefully maybe we can get Brad on. I know he's kind of got some stuff going on right now, but hopefully we could get Brad on too. Or maybe we can.
I've talked to him, and I know that he. Yeah, I talked to him. I know he's wishing that he could be on. I know he wants to. I know he would love to sit here and talk with you too. But yeah, he's going through that academy right now. So
yeah,
probably. But in the spring he'll be available. So he should be out of that and freed up. And I think we're planning another trip to at least, I don't know where we're back in Montana probably again, but we'll be back out west this spring too. So
awesome. But yeah, we'll probably have to get a recap on that too.
Before we cut out of here, why don't you give another plug on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, so it's you can watch the videos that I've uploaded from our trip to Montana, and then it's a 2-part deal with Montana and then Wyoming being the second part to that. And I'll just say, I don't know, Paul, if Andre told you, but I'm going to say it right now. A big thanks to Andre, that bird that I killed in Wyoming, because Andre and I are both sitting on the same tree, and the bird comes out on the side, which is the side that Andre was on, and he's right down Andre's barrel. Right. And he saves it for me. He says, no,
you guys found him.
Bird,
he was yours, man.
And I would have been totally fine. Like, I wanted you back there with us. I would have been totally fine if you shot him. But, but I also wasn't going to pass that opportunity. So it was a cool experience. And I just, I love the way that the good Lord works in situations and puts people together like this that can share and something that we're so passionate about, and also just and in life too. I mean, it's cool to have friends and that you can ask questions about, like, how do you do it with 5 kids? What do I need to do? And stuff. But
I have never had that experience because I don't have any.
Yeah. It'll make you pull your hair out for sure, but there's nothing like it.
I watched all my friends growing up from high school and stuff go through the exact same thing you guys are. Yeah. And I guess I was too selfish with my hunting and fishing that I wanted all of it for myself.
I'll say that my oldest
and I think
son,
about that all the time, by the way, Paul. Every time I'm thinking about going out there, but I can't, I'm like, man, Paul can go whenever he wants,
For the most part, I just got to peel myself away from work is all.
Yeah.
Well, my oldest son got his first deer about 2 weeks ago now. It was a week before I got mine.
How old
we shot
is
our
he?
books exactly a week up.
That's
He's
awesome.
6.
He's 6.
And I'll tell you, I'll tell you that nice buck that I shot, I was much more excited the day that Owen, which is my oldest, got his than I was when I shot that nice buck that I'd been hunting for 2 years.
Sure.
And so just that experience of being out there, and I had actually my oldest 2 boys. I have 3 sons, but my oldest 2, the 3 of us were together for that hunt for Owen, and that whole experience was just so cool. So that's one thing, I will say I'm super looking forward to in years to come, is just they're passionate about it too. They love hunting and turkey hunting and deer hunting, and they're into it. They love it. And so being able to experience that with them in the coming years, I think is just going to be fantastic. Right now, it'll make you want to pull your hair out sometimes, but there's moments like that just make it all worth it. So
they'll still probably make you want to pull your hair out when they get older too, but at least you'll have to be able to go hunting and stuff with them.
Tyler,
right.
in your opinion, things are a little bit more difficult when they're younger, right? Because they're so they're so hands-on. They can't do anything for themselves. It's like you have to take care of them the entire day, versus when they're older, there's other things they could do. But so Are the earlier years kind of the more difficult time?
Yeah, they're more time intensive, right? So like I had less time, especially like when with newborns and when they're younger, like it takes up more time at that point. And then now I just take them with me. Like I'll go scouting and putting out trail cameras, and I've got a whole army of them just following me.
You're
and,
like the Pied Piper.
Yeah, they're just following me, trekking through the woods. Getting stuck by briars and crying about it, and then I'm like take the briar off of them, and they just keep trucking along. But and I'm making them walk a fair distance back there to put this trail camera out. But all that being said, they they have now established that they love it. Now they want to, at first they maybe not want to so much. Oh, are we out here briar sticking me, etc. But like now they just love it. They're like, oh, let's go put a trail camera out, let's go ride around and look for deer, let's go ride around and look for turkeys, or and that's one thing. In the spring, I'll just ride around in the vehicle with them and roost birds in the evening, or ride around one morning and on Saturday morning before the season comes in and just spot birds, here, there, or yonder, or, get somewhere where I can throw a call out and see if anything responds. And, they tag along for all that stuff. And so, yeah, it is tough. You have to load 3 boys up to go do anything, but at the same time, they really enjoy it, gets them into the outdoors, and it still lets me go do it too. So
for sure.
Well, it's quality time with their dad, and not a lot of kids get that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. It was a shame, but yeah, I'm thankful for those opportunities.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's very difficult, but it's all worth it. So.
And Paul, you still hunt with your dad up to this day, right?
Right. And those are probably my funnest hunts when we call one in for him, and he gets so excited, and he's always doing crazy stuff. Called a Jake and a 2-year-old in for him one time, and he ended up shooting the Jake. The other one was in strut, so he shot the one with its head up. I was like, oh man, Dwayne.
Yeah. All right, fellas. Well, I appreciate the time. So yeah, with that said, Tyler, appreciate you being on here. We're gonna have to get you on again. And
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And until next time, we'll see you on the other episode, folks.
Yep. Take it easy, Tyler.